All right, today we're going to do the November TBR, which is a mix of obligation reads and also a pile of possibilities for a project I'm sort of working on. I do think this list is a tad ambitious, not outlandishly maybe. I don't know, I haven't looked at the page numbers. I think that's really what it comes down to. But in general, I think it's manageable because I have a good blend of physical versus audio because for sure half, if not more than my reading these days is audiobook based because of my commute 3 times a week I'm driving, and that's like only audiobook time. And I've been carving out more time for physical reading, but I've also been playing Witcher more. But there's also the holiday, which means I'm both busy and not busy. It's November is a mixed bag. We'll see what gets accomplished. We'll go through like my obligations / books that have nothing to do with any project, and then we'll go through a list of things that like I have on my list because of a project I'm working on that may or may not be gotten to because that project is fairly ambitious. So it's more just like, I think, and also library holds and all that stuff. So first off, for Patreon, we have our buddy read for the next 2 months. So this is a book that doesn't have to be finished in November, but I would love to start it in November, and that is The Surviving Sky. This is such a pretty cover. And I was also noticing that I really haven't read a lot of science fiction this year. Or at least not new science fiction. I'm pretty sure this is like science fiction, alternative, future society sort of situation. So I would really love to read this because it's one of the new ones. I'm thinking about making a video of like what were the science fiction releases that I would like that I have missed this year, because obviously they're not even on my radar. I think part of that is, as you probably noticed, the recent release roundups have kind of been on hiatus because when I make those videos, they take hours of work and I have not had hours of time. That's just the math. It's just the time has not existed to do those things ever since I made some life decisions in August. So yeah, between stuff with Delilah and then life decisions we made that you guys will hear about by the end of the year, just not talking about it yet, they've just been on a hiatus. So I don't know if that's part of it or if there've just been less sci-fi releases I care about. I mean, like, I know there are some I haven't read that I want to, like the new Sue Burke, but like for the most part, I was actually astounded because I've read my normal amount, if not more than normal, new releases, but not really science fiction. So this would be exciting, and this cover is so pretty. Like, it's just so stunning, so I'm just hoping it lands. Another book I'm going to read, so this is my patrons pick for my TBR. I had them go through some of the arcs I have and pick one of those. Although, funnily enough, this only won by one vote. If you were here last month, there was a tie. The kittens had to vote. And so this is the second book in Malka Older's kind of detective series. It's called The Imposition of Unnecessary Obstacles. I normally don't like long titles, and I still don't really. The first one's The Mimicking of Known Successes, but I do think there is kind of a cadence and sound flow to these titles that make them kind of fun to me. So I'm a little more forgiving. I loved the first novella in the series. I'm not a detective person, but this detective duo is why I'm here. It was less about the plot and more about this second chance friendship romance situation. I'm a sucker for it. Kind of reminded me of that first episode of Bones where you get the idea that Booth and Brennan have been in each other's lives before, but you don't know why they're at an impasse now. And yeah. And it's Holmesian, so we got that Watson Holmes type of thing. So you have the really smart one and the more personable one, and yeah. I am excited. Also, per usual, Malka Older's society building and world building is top notch. If you've never read anything by her, I do have a should you read for her Infomocracy series, which is one of the coolest sci-fi trilogies I've read. It's not going to be for everyone, and it wasn't like a 5-star series for me, but in terms of world building, it was great. Also, I didn't actually get to finish the book that they voted for me last month, or the kittens picked, which was Theft of Swords. So that's back on the TBR because I really did want to read it. It's just that for the last week of October, I really wanted to read Halloween adjacent books. And this is definitely fall, but it wasn't Halloween adjacent sort of thing. So it's back on the TBR. I at least read enough of it to know that I want to finish it, which is exciting. So at least in that regard, it was a good momentum forward sort of pick. So I think those are all my Patreon related things. And then we are continuing our Fitz and Fool trilogy reading. The end of the first book is A Time, so I'm excited. We're going to jump into Fool's Quest very soon. And this time, my library actually has a Kindle copy and not just a Libby copy, which is very exciting for me. Although I liked the first book in that Fitz and Fool series enough that it didn't actually bother me that I was reading it on my phone the whole time. Normally it really does, just because E-reading's already weird compared to physical reading because you don't get to see your progress, but I've gotten used to how Kindle lets me feel my progress, whether it's in times left or percentage, or it'll have some version of a page number. None of that exists with Libby. Libby, like, it sort of tries to guess based off how many times you pick up and put it down, but it doesn't account for the fact that, you know, when you're on your phone, sometimes you leave it open. So it thinks, man, you're taking a really long time to read this page. It's like, no, but whatever. Whereas the Kindle kind of accounts for that a little better. Regardless, I'm excited to read this book because of things I can't talk about, because it's like the second to last book in a 16-book series. So let's just say, though, I need to know the resolution of some things, and I'm very excited because this has been my second favorite trilogy since Live Ship in Realm of the Elderlings, which is very exciting to me. And then the last book that I would like to get to, especially if the audiobook comes in, is Vampires of El Norte. I bought it, didn't quite get to it in October, although, like, in general, I don't think it's necessarily completely tied to that type of atmosphere, and, like, this type of atmospheric romance, supernatural adjacent thing, I think I can read anytime in fall and feel appropriately in the season. So I have it. I bought it because I bought it. I would like to read it just because, like, I bought it with the intention of reading it soon. Like, I had that idea. So I would like to. We'll see if it happens. And now into there are like 6 books I have on my list, and I don't think I'll get to all 6 of them, but I want to start chipping away at it because my kind of nebulous goal this year is to read as many of the Goodreads Choice Awards books that are going to maybe be on the short list or even the long list. For sure, I would love to see if I could read, like, the top 10 that are on the short list, and I feel like I'm already got a head start on it. I do have a video where I've predicted what I think will be on it based off, like, you can never completely know. I think Mara had a really good video on this for, like, the mystery thriller category, where it's like, for the most part, yes, based off ratings and numbers on shelves, you can be like, oh yeah, for sure, like, these 5 to 7 books will be in the top 10. But, like, then there's sometimes, like, this human factor. There's some person at Goodreads who does, like, kind of move things around and put books that maybe mathematically shouldn't be there, but they want them there for representation or to make it more well-rounded. I don't know. It's not clear how these lists are completely curated, other than, you know, it has to do with number of shelves, not read shelves, so it could just be on a bunch of want-to-read shelves. And as long as it has a certain rating, if it's very popular, it could make it. So based off that, I made that video. And these are 6 of the ones that I think have a chance of making it to the top 10 or top 15 that I haven't gotten to yet. One of them is Wayward. There is a chance this doesn't make the fantasy list, that it makes the historical fiction list, depending on how magical realism it feels. Because magical realism type fantasy can go either way. It depends. This is a 3-time perspective piece, 3 different women. I assume their plots intersect in some way. That's all I know. It's incredibly popular. I think it was a book of the month. I do like the cover. I have the audiobook, so it's also probably my next audiobook I get to because I am running out of time on it. And because it's so popular, it's hard to get the audiobook in. That's another thing. Is, like, there is this sort of time crunch for some of these books because as I'm getting them from the library, they're not easy to renew because they're new and they're, you know, popular. So this one's maybe my next audiobook. I have Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab, which is probably, like, I'm banking it on the fact that it's just so fantasy and it's Schwab. And so Schwab is this nice intersection of, like, fantasy readers and Goodreads fantasy readers sort of thing. Kind of like Leigh Bardugo, sort of. Like, so even though this is a fairly new release and it's the 4th book in a series or a 1st book in a new trilogy, that's the 2nd trilogy in a series, you know, whatever, I think it's got enough buzz. It's on enough want-to-read shelves. I think it's being received well enough by fans that's going to be there. And I have read the original trilogy. And I'm just going to jump into this. Next up, I do think is definitely also more of the, like, this is because it was maybe in book of the month, or this is more like the general fiction readers adjacent to fantasy, and that's Atalanta. It's a Greek retelling. It's the same author as Ariadne and Electra, which I think both of them have made the shortlist before. For sure Ariadne did. I'm not sure about Electra completely. I don't know anything about this character. I haven't tried this author yet. I have the ebook and the audiobook, so I wouldn't mind giving it a shot. I saw the physical book at the library the other day, so I have access to it. But that also makes this, like, less of my priority, and I've also just not been called to it. I don't know why. I love Greek mythology, but I do think I've read enough Greek mythology retellings that I'm just like, I don't know what these do to me, like, for me. Like, I like Greek mythology in the short form, of, like, just, like, the little myth that you read in, you know, Edith Hamilton's book sort of thing. I mean, I read the Odyssey in high school and stuff like that, but I don't know, expanding it to novel length, I don't think works for me as well as, say, like, a novella or a short story or something like that, which is probably why I've just not been drawn to them as much. The next one, I don't know if it will make it, but it's definitely on enough shelves, and I have an arc of it, and it seems cozy, so if I'm like, have a free Saturday or Sunday where I just want to read a book, I feel like this book will be perfect, and that's Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree, the second book in that Legends and Lattes universe. It is a prequel, so it takes place before the events, so like you kind of know everything that happens in this book. It's important for our main character's internal growth, but it has no character crossover per se with Legends and Latte. I think that'll be fine for me. We'll find out. I do think a large part of why I liked Legends and Lattes is that we were building a shop from the ground up, and this won't have that, so we'll see if this new, like, plot narrative thing works for me. I do think, though, also the writing style was just very easy. It was a book I could read in an afternoon. There aren't many books that I can do that with, so I got a lot of points for that. So, and I do think, with the popularity of Legends and Lattes, this could at least make the top 20, maybe not the top 10, we'll see. It also is kind of like more classic fantasy looking based off the cover. And then the next two are fantasy romances that I haven't gotten to yet. One of them I think I just want to get to. I just don't know if I'll be able to based off my library holds. But the first one we'll talk about that I already have because it's on Kindle Unlimited, so I got the 3-month free Kindle Unlimited to try this series out, and that is The Serpents and the Wings of Night. I think the second book is going to make the list, not this book, but I would have to read this book and the novella first. And then I would read the other one, which November, I'm generally usually in a mood for at least one romance, one fantasy romance. That's typically who I am. So hopefully this one scratches an itch. I've read the first chapter or so, because I thought about reading it this month, but then I never picked up speed with it. I'm like super early, like 3 chapters in. I know we're with vampires. I know she was adopted by a vampire. It reminds me a lot of like the beginning of The Cruel Prince, where like in that one Jude is adopted by fairy, sort of thing, and like her fairy family does like kind of care about her and wants her to survive, and she's surrounded by monsters all the time. It reminds me of that premise. There's a competition so that maybe she can become a vampire. I have not met the love interest yet. So far, not hooked, but also haven't given myself enough time to become hooked, sort of thing. And then the last one is Iron Flame, one of my most anticipated releases of this fall because I really loved Fourth Wing, and it also landed on, like, not a cliffhanger, but, like, there was a reveal. And it's like, I would like to see the payoff of that reveal now, please. But I'm not willing to buy it because I will not spend more than $10 on an ebook. I just can't do it, and I don't want a physical book. And so, yeah, I mean, I already have my hold in for the library, but it's also, like, still probably going to take me till December to get to it. So, and I'm pretty much banking on the fact that they'll have Fourth Wing on the list and not also Iron Flame. We'll see. But if that's the case, maybe hopefully by end of November, early December, I'll have it. And so that can just be part of the December part of this reading project. So those are my tentative plans. Always a chance that I pick up something else if something, strikes my fancy, but this is where I'm currently at, and yeah, I'm hoping I'll also just have more focus because each month I'm getting less and less anxious, but it also, I can see myself becoming more anxious again in the future, and like anxiety is the one thing where it's really hard for me to read when I'm really anxious, because I'm already have like okay focus when I'm like at my neutral, but anxiety makes it like I'm thinking about everything but what I'm doing, and so it's really hard to sink into things. It has to be like a fairly straightforward, no brains activity, I guess is what I'm saying. And video games are a lot easier at distracting me when I'm anxious. So maybe if I just keep things up with The Witcher, I'll be okay. Also, there's a new Doctor Who coming, and so we need to catch up on Doctor Who because Ryan hasn't finished watching David Tennant, so I'm sure that'll take up some of my time. We were doing pretty good, but then we pivoted to watching a bunch of movies for the spooky season, so we need to get back on that Doctor Who train because we still have to finish season 2, 3, and 4. Before we get to the new special that's coming. I'm not like super concerned because it doesn't feel like quite like back in the day when we all watched those specials at the same time together, especially because it's just going to be released on streaming and stuff like that. And like back then, I was in high school, so all of us would get together at someone's house, and we just don't have that anymore because we're all across the country. So we'll see, but I'm sure that'll eat into my reading time as well, is really what I'm trying to say. So that's this video. What are you reading this November? Do you plan on having a lot of reading time or less because of the holidays or the end of the year ramp up? If you want to just leave an emoji to let me know you're here. Oh, I don't know. Leave a sword for Theft of Swords. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.